Okay, back on. Okay, so here we are.
We are here.
Podcast episode. And I think today we should just introduce ourselves and talk about what this podcast is going to be about and just get really excited about what we want to create.
Yeah, that sounds great to me. Okay.
Awesome. Well, I'll go first. My name is Nicole Tripodi, and I run a company called Fed Inform. And basically, we help companies find and win small business contracts. And I have been working in this industry for about 10 years. And in that time, I have helped companies win over $300 or $300 million in contract wins. And I've coached over 50 companies to grow and increase their top line revenue in this government space. And it's been a learning curve, not only for them, but for myself, in a major way. And I have just ultimately come to love what it is that I do to help small businesses grow and to really just kind of navigate the complex government market.
Awesome. And my name is Aubrey Gainfort, and I'm actually a senior contract specialist within the federal government. I work for the Transportation Security Administration, and I've been in contracting and procurement for 11 years. And I have always just had this really, it's kind of just been with me since day one, but I've always had this like really strong desire to educate and help support small businesses. And we have goals within our agencies across the department, which we're going to talk about later on, that we're required to meet. But, on top of that, I'm always looking for ways that we can just give a small business an opportunity, because I really think that they should all be able to and allowed to do everything that they can. And, whenever I have the opportunity, we engage with industry, which Nicole and I are going to get into a lot, all the different ways that industry can engage. And it's taught me a lot about, what maybe where we on the government side really need to learn how to improve, how to communicate with the government, with the industry and with small businesses. And, not to toot my own horn, but, every year there's a Small Business Advocate Award, and, it requires you to award 100% of your procurements to small businesses. And I actually did that. And I try to do that every year, but I guess they can't give me the award every year. So I'll just accept my one award and go home.
Awesome. I love that. I love that that small business advocacy is so big. And I like that you were talking about communication, because that's really what we want to create with this podcast. So the title of the podcast is Breaking the Standard. And our tagline is that we're closing the communication and knowledge gap for small businesses in GovCon. So when it comes to breaking the standard, what we really mean by that is giving small businesses the information and the tools that they need so that they can break out of that size standard, so that they can actually grow out of that size standard and go on to do bigger and better things.
Yeah, I mean, we're both, it's so funny because we're on opposite sides of the contracting world, but one of the things that we both have agreed on from day one around this is that small businesses can and should be able and allowed to do everything. And if there's a restriction, like a size standard, an employee size, there's a certification that they don't quote unquote fit into, they get knocked out of the running immediately. And there's a lot of things that small businesses, if they had the resources and the knowledge, I really think that they would have more opportunities, or they'd even just try. Because even if you try and you don't win something, you can get a debrief and learn how to do it better for the next time. But there's none of that available, which is what we both have an issue with. So that's why we're here.
Exactly. And as a representative, I mean, I guess I'll call myself a representative of small business from an industry standpoint, because I think that a lot of times companies come into this market, at least some of the companies that I've worked with, they've come into this market and they don't quite know what's appropriate. You learn things over time. You learn, that there's that it's not acceptable to give gifts to government representatives. You might not know that if you work in a commercial space, you might be coming from a completely different set of rules and regulations, or no rules and regulations really. And then all of a sudden you come into this market and there are rules and regulations. And so being able to navigate that space too, I think will be really key.
Yeah, and I mean, as the government is far from perfect, and the thing is we do try to, refine and improve, and there's always still some disconnect between with what we're asking for and what we get. And so it's really, I think, vital for, for what I can share and what I can create with, who's going to be listening, what you should be looking for and like what we're really asking. Because 9 times out of 10, and Nicole and I have talked about this on the other side too, it's, well, this is what we thought you were asking for. Well, that's actually not what we meant. And if we can figure out a way to help bridge that gap for small businesses too, small businesses have the opportunity to bid on anything. Like, unless you're flat out told you can't, you actually do have the right and the ability to bid on everything. So this is your starting point to be able to say, well, how do I get to know more about that? Or how do I get in touch with that? And I want to learn more about that. So this is your starting point.
Perfect. And I think it's really great, just between you and I know that there's so much that I can learn on how the government does things, why the government does things. And so I think that part of what we can do in this podcast is give that information exchange that not only will benefit our listeners, but also the way that you and I kind of interact with the market. And I'm really excited about that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I cannot wait. I am so fascinated to understand from your side and from, and from industry, like everything that really goes into, how you create your company and what you're really trying to like market and what's your niche and like, um, you know, understanding like how to get into the pool of government work and then what it takes for you to actually, respond to a solicitation, put it together. Like that, everything costs money, and we don't get to see any of that on our side. We just see what the finished product is. So, which I think a lot of times we take for granted. And, I really want to be able to learn that process and be able to just, not change it overnight, but at least be able to help like my side understand, like people put a lot of time and effort into these things. And so we shouldn't take it lightly.
Well, I'm really excited because there's a guest speaker that I want to bring on later on.
Ooh.
And he is the perfect person to talk about that. His specialty is proposals. And so he'll be able to tell us not only, how he thinks about things on the industry side, but also give some real good tips and tricks to our listeners on what they can do to make their proposal responses even better. And then there's the proposal side, but there's also the evaluation side. And so that's another thing that I'm really excited to talk about is what really happens in the acquisition side. What's the process? Communication between government and industry is so key during that process. And it doesn't always happen the way that we envision or want it to, or it should ideally. And so talking about those different processes and maybe where there's more opportunity for industry to engage or to understand more about a requirement so they can put together a really great proposal would be really helpful.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking about, people that we want to bring on, like, I mean, we have so many ideas of all these different topics we want to cover. And, I know that we have a couple of people already that have said that they want to be on. And, my father-in-law used to be a small business owner. And so I would love to invite him to come on because sometimes you are a small business owner and then you sell your business. And I know that it's a changing market and, you might create another business down the road. But I think hearing from him, because he's got a very specialized certification that only a handful of people in the country have in IT. And it would be really interesting to understand like where we failed him from the government side, like what went wrong, because I'd be shocked if he said, oh, the government didn't do anything wrong. Because I'm sure something happened. Like I'm sure that there was something there or just the opportunities weren't enough. But I also am really curious to hear from like the proposal writer, and I really am looking forward to trying to talk to like small business advocates. I mean, we have a small business administration. You know, there's so many people that, if you don't know this, you have the federal official headquarters, and then you have small business administration representatives for every single office in the state. So I'm going to try and find somebody for our location. We actually are, you know, in the DMV area. So we have the beauty of being able to pick from 3. So I'm going to try for 3 different people to see if we can get them on there. But we've got so many ideas and so many topics that we want to chat with you about. And, you know, it's just really exciting that this is finally coming to fruition, because, you know, we had talked about it and it just kind of organically happened. So thank you if you're listening. We can't wait to hear your questions and what you want to hear more about. And, you know, just thanks for listening.
Yeah, more than anything, we do want to hear your feedback so that we can also create additional conversations around the things that are really important to you, the things that you want to hear about. And I'm really excited too, just to reiterate, I am so excited. We've been talking about this not for a long time, but you and I have known each other for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
We've always kind of gone back and forth on this passion that we both have for small business success. And I'm really excited that we are doing this to start to turn that into a reality.
Absolutely. I mean, I can't stress enough, you know, that sometimes people just don't, the reason that people don't do anything or take action is because they don't know. And so like you and I have even learned so much just in like nonchalant conversations that we've had over the last couple of years. And so I can't even imagine, you know, like when we really focus on like a specific topic, and there are plenty of topics that we're going to talk about that we could probably talk about forever. You know, and we'll just provide as much information as we can. But, you know, I just can't wait to learn more about the other side and be able to just, you know, help as many people that have questions or want to learn more about this. Like, I'm just excited, you know, so I can't wait. We're both very excited.
So how do people reach us if they want to submit comments or questions or anything of that sort?
Well, that's a great question. So right now, you can reach us through, we have an Instagram page. So our Instagram page is actually the same name as our podcast. It's called Breaking the Standard. It's all one word. And you can actually send us a direct message on there if you want to ask us a question. We also actually have an email address. So it's breakingthestandard, all one word, @gmail.com. And Nicole or I will be happy to answer your question. It could potentially show up on a future podcast. And, you know, or you could subscribe to the podcast and just ask a question in the comments below the podcast. And either which way, we will figure out how to respond to you and make sure that your question has been answered.
Awesome. Well, great. So I am so happy that we are closing the communication and knowledge gap for small businesses in GovCon, and I'm excited to move this forward. So we will publish this podcast and create more episodes.
Yeah, and you know, we promise as we move forward, you know, this is clearly our first time doing a podcast. So next time we'll definitely get the hang of this a little bit better. But thank you all so much for listening, and we can't wait to meet you and chat with you, and more to come.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.